Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Gazette's In-Depth Week. I'm so glad you could be joining us today on our final day of Aging in Iowa. So I'm sure many of you have already known and been aware of what the panelists were doing, but for those who may not, we appreciate you joining us. So as part of our Iowa Ideas Initiative, we've been taking the time to explore key issues in Iowa. And this week, we were specifically focusing on aging in Iowa. As the number of Iowans age 65 and older continues to grow, we wanted to take the time to talk about critical resources that are needed for this population and what challenges industry leaders, government officials, advocates across the state face in helping keeping this population safe, thriving, and happy. And helping us out this week too is our wonderful sponsors. And before we really get started with today's topic, I would like us to listen to a video briefly from those sponsors.
Hello, I'm Kathy Good, the director of the Chris and Susie Dewolf Family Innovation Center for Aging and Dementia, and I'm pleased to have the opportunity to introduce you to the Dewolf Innovation Center, a place of continuing discovery of new ways to look at aging and dementia. And all who visit will experience an environment that is friendly to older adults and those living with dementia, from the lighting to the flooring to the colors on the walls, the furnishings, the wayfinding, all very innovatively designed to meet the needs of the population that we serve. It will provide services to Halmar Village residents and the public, services offered by the new Mercy Center for Memory Health, the Family Caregiver Center, and the Mercy Clinic for Geriatric Acute Care. It will house a dementia-enabled smart apartment full of ideas to age in place at home, kiosks that demonstrate assistive technology, and a community-focused demonstration program for people living with early-stage dementia. These services have been thoughtfully created using a design thinking model that encompasses customer discovery, which leads to prototypes and ultimately to implementation. The Design Thinking Innovation Experience model is a signature of the Dewolf Innovation Center, available to be facilitated for other stakeholders and organizations. So we're very excited about the difference that we will make by thinking differently about how people age and live with dementia. And I hope you will take the opportunity to learn more about the great work happening at the Dewolf Innovation Center and join us to improve the lives of individuals in our communities. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So today's topic for In-Depth Week, we are going to be talking about seniors and poverty, and how the current economic situation in the United States may be impacting a broader scope of retirees and near retirees on fixed incomes than maybe we've seen previously. So to discuss all this is our panelist who is seeing the impact firsthand from where she works. So Jacqueline, could you take a moment to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do and what work you do?
Okay, my name is Jacqueline Owens. I am the outreach specialist for National ABLE. I'm the manager of over that area, and I oversee all of our five states in working with our career coaches and doing outreach to seniors for our program, as well as trying to entice partners to work with us to place our seniors at their host agencies. What the Csep program does is it works with individuals that are 55 or better and on a basic income. And we provide them with computer skills with the intent of hopefully helping them transition back into the workforce. But if that's not their goal, we try and help them become ready for that day when they decided they're not going to work anymore. Hopefully by helping them be food secure with maybe getting SNAP benefits, having housing attained for them, and other resources that we do referrals for. So I've worked with the senior community for about 7 years, and it's a passion of mine. As a matter of fact, I'm a senior, so I have a few words that I can say on that as well. But without further ado, I'll get back to you, Michelle, and let you take it from here.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and I appreciate you taking the time to join us today. And I liked your term, 55 and better. I'm going to have to remember that to use
Yes, because
throughout
we
the
get better after 55, believe it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, great. Well, we were going to have another panelist here today, but I think there might be some technical difficulties. So Mike from Horizons here in Cedar Rapids might be joining us here shortly. Otherwise, if not, I really appreciate you being a good sport, Jacqueline, and tackling this topic for us today.
I hope that I can be of help.
Absolutely. So I guess before we get started, I just wanted to state for the record, I think today's topic is something that everyone listening in can relate to. Inflation has been tough for a lot of people. And so, to say that everyone isn't feeling it right now is really not what we're trying to do here. I think what we're trying to do is just during this panel, focus on rising costs have posed a particular challenge for individuals on fixed income, such as seniors or those age 55, 65 and better. And I wanted to take a moment to set the scene to read this stat that I've received from AARP Iowa. It's estimated that about a third of older Iowans who rely on Social Security benefits for 90% of their expenses each month. And so today, with the dollar stretching less than where it did 6 months ago, a year ago, residents are struggling, it's safe to say. And that's certainly the stance that AARP Iowa has taken. So set the scene. I hope you could speak, Jacqueline, to how this is really manifesting for your clients and the seniors that you work for. What are you really seeing right now as we're dealing with these rising costs?
Well, I see that some of the seniors that I've worked with are really feeling food insecure. The SNAP benefits that were granted during the pandemic have been reduced, although my participants have not been cut off, because in my program, they're giving an exemption from their wages for Csep, so that when they go out and apply for SNAP benefits, if they've been approved in the past, they will continue to get those. But again, since the pandemic, those SNAP benefits have been reduced. So they've been relying more and more on maybe like the food pantries and things of that nature. We pride ourselves with providing resources for food pantries throughout their areas and their communities, to let them know which ones are open, at what days, the times, and which ones have a little bit more robust packaging to give them. So that's what we've been focusing on. And as far as housing, again, seniors in our program are provided with basically not having to use that income to assist them with their housing. A lot of them have like Section 8s, if you're familiar with that term, where they do have benefits. But for those that have been impacted with housing costs, I've seen some of them having to maybe move with relatives. And that's been hard on a lot of my seniors, because up until this time, they've been pretty much self-sufficient, being on their own. And that's a hardship. And it's really making them kind of depressed. So not to bring depression into this conversation, but those are some of the things that are happening. So
definitely. Well, it's certainly an important aspect to consider too, as I'm sure as you're thinking about working with these seniors and helping them through this.
Yes, it is. It definitely is.
Absolutely. Well, it looks like maybe Mike has been able to join us via the phone. Mike, is that you? Perhaps not. I apologize.
I think I saw a number come up as well.
Okay. Well, if Mike is, if you can hear us, if you're able to jump in and let us know you're here, that would be great. Otherwise, I'll kind of bring it back to you, Jacqueline, just to kind of speak. I wanted to focus on that point that you raised about the SNAP benefits. So here in Iowa, we have also ended the extended SNAP benefits. From my understanding, benefits on average have dropped about 43% for most Iowans. And really that can mean for a family about $200 less a month, which is not insignificant, right? Yeah, absolutely.
Can you hear me?
So, yes, we can hear you, Mike.
Okay, good. Sorry.
So
Okay, go ahead. Continue.
No, please. Actually, this is a good moment. We'll kind of divert. Mike, can you introduce yourself to the attendees here?
Okay. Yeah, I'm Mike Barnhart. I'm the CEO here at Horizons Family Service Alliance in Cedar Rapids, and we operate a Meals on Wheels program that is relevant to the topic today. We serve about 800 meals to older adults out of our kitchen every day, and I think everybody knows what Meals on Wheels is, so I look forward to participating in the conversation. And again, I apologize for being late in here.
No, it's just grateful you could join us today. I apologize for the technical difficulties. You would think year 2 in pandemic, we would have figured this out, but it is what it is. Well, great. Well, maybe I'll kind of direct that question I was asking to you, Mike, if that works. So, as I said, SNAP benefits have dropped, and Jacqueline was saying that she's certainly seeing an impact in her region. What impact are you seeing on your organization right now?
Well, we've had the SNAP benefits ended in March, and that was, I think it was $95 a month. That is what that extended benefit was. And we've had a 14% increase in meal recipients since March, which it's equivalent to about an increase of 100 people that we're serving. So, during the pandemic, what the impact of that means is, like, during the pandemic, we were distributing additional food boxes and, personal care items and things like that, toilet paper, soap, shampoo, and I would anticipate with the reduced money that our meal recipients have that we will be going back into that. As the pandemic eased, like, the initial reason for doing that was the population we serve was vulnerable to the virus, right? So that's why we were doing it. Now we need to get back into it for monetary reasons. We want to make sure people are fed with nutritious food. Mm-hmm. And through our program, I should say that they have, most of our funding comes through the Older Americans Act. And through that, we can provide 2 meal types a day. And typically, if somebody requests the 2 meal types a day, like, they could get a frozen meal that they could reheat later and a hot meal, or a breakfast bag. There's 3 choices, and the breakfast bag is a week's worth of food. So, we're seeing an increase in people wanting to get the two different meal types so they get more food. So any way that we can get more food out, we're going to be looking at that, or any way we can help them monetarily. We don't give direct money benefits, but anything we can do to help them save money, we're going to do. So, and we also partner with Feed Iowa First. If you're familiar with them, they're a local grower of fresh vegetables. We've partnered with them for many years, and we try to distribute fresh produce out to folks that receive meals when we can. And again, I mentioned the food boxes. HACAP has been very generous with us with food. And our folks are, there's a lot of services in the community here, but the folks that we serve by definition are homebound, and they can't get out to, a food pantry or, congregate meal site or, anything like that. So it's important that we get that food delivered to them.
Absolutely. Jacqueline, could you jump off that a little bit? What steps are you and your organization taking to try to address this food insecurity you're seeing in seniors? What does that effort really look like right now?
Again, as I had mentioned previously, we provide contact information for services that are local to those individuals that are in need, so that they can go somewhere within, hopefully a mile or half a mile within where they reside, so they can pick up those nutritious items that they need. We provide the days of pickup, and also where there's sometimes that they can have food delivered to them, like the Meals on Wheels, if that's available for them as well. Because some of the participants since COVID has been kind of struggling. Some of them have, long-term effects from COVID, so we try and accommodate them as much as possible.
Absolutely. What are you hearing from clients in terms of what choices they're having to make as they're dealing with food insecurity? Are you able to kind of speak with clients and kind of hear their stories?
Yes, I would say on a daily basis, I hear clients, my CSEP participants calling me, and sometimes just wanting to share what's going on, but sometimes asking about resources. And I know that some participants are struggling with, this may not sound like a lot to a lot of people, but paying the small fee that they have for internet. We've directed a lot of our participants that they can have internet for basically about $10 a month. And some of them are struggling to continue to keep their internet services in light of, okay, supplementing the food pantry, or if they had a large reduction in their SNAP benefit, trying to make, ends meet that way. So I'd say that's basically seeing really the core of their struggle if they have to make a choice between something so small as $10 a month. So that kind of tears my heart.
Wow, yeah, absolutely. And just to pause for a moment, I've realized that I forgot to mention at the beginning of this panel, attendees, if you have questions for our panelists and would like to ask them throughout, please feel free to do so by using the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. And I can certainly try to get to them throughout this conversation, but we'll certainly leave some time at the end for our panelists to answer audience questions as well. But diverting back, certainly heartbreaking stories that you're hearing. Talk specifically about what challenges they're facing when it comes to housing costs, utility costs, some of those basic living needs. What conversations are you guys having right now? What are the needs right now in that space?
Well, I'd like to first kind of put it in perspective a little bit, and give you a description of what a Meals on Wheels recipient might look like financially. And our meal recipients are generally on a fixed income, right? There is going to be a bump in Social Security. I'm not sure how much, but that will take effect later in the year. But 44% of our meal recipients are below the federal poverty line. And the federal poverty line is $12,880 for a single person household. That's $1,073 a month. That's not very much to live on. Another 26% are below 150% of the poverty level, which is $19,320 or $1,600 a month for a single person household. And 66% of our meal recipients do live alone in our single person households. So, again, back to depending on where they live, they may have difficulty accessing food resources or even a grocery store. So any change in expenses is going to impact. People they're living on a shoestring with that. So the $95 going away for the food SNAP benefit, if they were on SNAP, is huge. Any increase in rent, which we see, with the inflation. I was just reading a couple of weeks ago in the Gazette that rents are going up. Everything, inflation for food, everything is going up, and they don't have any room, to add those additional expenses in. So any increase in housing expenses or anything is, very difficult for these folks. And some of them do own their own homes. And you get into, we had a house we went to, it was during this winter, during one of the super cold snaps, that one of the volunteers called us and said that the window on their front door was broken, so we went and got that fixed, and they didn't have money to repair it. So we used made a referral to a chore service in town, and, we patched the window temporarily, and then Aging Services was able to go out there and fix it permanently. But, there's a lot of things get set aside because they don't have the money to pay for it.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. No, certainly a good point to raise, sort of the choices these clients are having to make when they can't make the dollar stretch that they need to. Are we seeing choices like maybe they're choosing not to drive to the doctor's office because they can't afford gas, or maybe pay that copay on the prescription they need? Are we seeing anything like that right now?
Well, I'm sorry, go ahead, Mark. Go ahead, Mark.
No, go ahead, Jacqueline.
Well, in Illinois, in the Cook County area in particular, I have not seen it get to the point where they have not been able to get their medications, because a lot of my seniors are receiving Medicaid as well as Medicare. So the Medicaid is kind of supplementing what the Medicare is not doing for them. So I'm very excited to hear that, because in the past, there have been participants in my program that have asked for supportive services to get prescriptions that they sorely needed. We couldn't do it on a monthly basis, but we could set aside what the supportive services cost allowance was for that year and give that to them, and hopefully they could make their prescriptions stretch until we help them with referral services to help in other ways. So it can get bad, but knock on wood, I don't have really wood around me, but anyway, it hasn't been that bad. So at least not in the last couple of years for my seniors.
Yeah, and the Medicaid, Medicare discussion throws a different little wrinkle in there. And I can speak to this as I have a disabled sister that lives with me. So this, and she does receive Meals on Wheels. It helps us out so she can, get a meal at lunchtime when nobody's there to feed her. But she is on Medicare, and she used to be on Medicaid. And when she was on Medicaid, she had a transportation benefit to get her to medical appointments. But when she got on Medicare, that transportation benefit was not there anymore. So she has to pay for any transportation out of pocket, and she's unable to drive. And, we're fortunate enough, there's people who are in, we're in pretty good circumstances, really, and we pay somebody to drive her around. But if we weren't able to do that, I don't know how she would get to medical appointments. And we live like right on the county line between Lynn and Jones County in Jones County. And it's like a $30 fee for her to go 7 miles to the doctor because it crosses the county line. So that's $60 round trip. How could you possibly pay for that? In town, if you're in Lynn County, in Cedar Rapids, Lyft's is, I think, $3 a ride, something like that. So that's going to be $6 round trip. But even with a low income, that's quite a bit. And if, people who have to private pay for it, it's very expensive. Transportation is very expensive. And transportation is often a forgotten about thing. But, again, the folks we deal with are, mobility challenged, and, they can't drive their own car, so they need outside transportation.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's an excellent point to raise. And also another interesting point that you raised, just the burden that this puts on families too. Not necessarily that that's a burden, but I imagine there is a trickle effect. If a senior or somebody in the family can't afford transportation or things like that, that would ultimately impact the family around them if they do have that support, that family support.
Yeah. I mean, she's very lucky, that we have a family that is supportive of her. And her income, I think she's like $1,400 or something a month, and she pays a Medicare Advantage premium. I'm not sure. I think it's a couple $100 a month, and then the Medicare is like $165. But anybody who's got that Advantage premium would pay the same. So that's $365 plus any rent or utilities right off the top before you're even getting into food for someone that's earning under $1,073 a month. That's a big chunk of their money before they've even bought food or soap or toothpaste or anything.
Yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately, I'm not sure what happened. It looks like we may have lost Jacqueline, maybe another technical difficulty. It's definitely Friday, and I think our internet is not working the way it should be right now. So I guess I'll just kind of lean on you then, Mike, moving forward until Jacqueline can kind of bring us back here. But I wanted to talk to you from your perspective as the head of an organization is really kind of working to address the challenges of this population right now. What challenges are you as an agency facing trying to meet this increasing demand? Are you finding that there are challenges doing that right now?
Well, there's always financial challenges. And, fortunately, we live in a community that is pretty supportive of, folks that are less fortunate. This is a very generous community, and we've been able to meet all the needs that, have been requested of us thus far. We don't have a wait list for meals or anything. And this is off the topic a little bit, but what we're trying to do is through the Meals on Wheels program, it's a very special relationship that it's almost all volunteers that deliver the meals. And it took me a long time to figure this out, but it's kind of counterintuitive that a volunteer is probably even more invested in that client or meal recipient than a paid employee may be. A paid employee can be plenty invested, but a volunteer, they made a conscious choice to come here for free to deliver that meal. And they want to make a difference with those folks. And we've rolled out an app that we use. We're still rolling it out. It's, out there and people use it, but we're going to have everybody use it. And the advantage of the app, app is neat and cool, but one thing, it keeps the information more secure. Two, we have a comments section in there so that they can, instead of writing comments on a piece of paper and setting it in a bin, where when somebody gets to it, they get to it and see what the comment is, and it could be a, kind of an important thing. They enter it into the app, and that goes directly to a care coordinator. And we created a position called a care coordinator maybe 6 months ago with the idea of doing more for the client. So if we see a need, the volunteer will, put that into the chat box of the app, send it to our care coordinator, and our care coordinator will follow up. And it could be, maybe they need a food box. Maybe they need help with their yard work. Maybe they need their window fixed. Maybe they have a porch that's cluttered. Maybe there's trip hazards. Maybe they didn't get dressed that day. There could be any number of things, or they just didn't seem alert, whatever it is. And, we could use that information to help people improve their health, nutrition, and stay in their homes longer, which I think we all want. So that's what we're trying to do to, we're really trying to leverage that relationship and make a bigger difference, because it is really a unique relationship. And the other thing, I think, you said, what's our agency struggling with? And I mentioned finances. And again, most of our meals are paid for through the Older Americans Act. And we contracted, I don't know if I'll get I got these numbers here. It's 194,000 meals we were contracted with through the Older Americans Act. Our fiscal year just ended the end of June. We delivered just through that contract 208,000. So we went over, 14,000 meals, and we do that every year. And typically, they've been able to make up that difference, and they've paid that difference. But even what they reimburse us, it's gone up this new fiscal year, but it was $3.91 per meal. And our cost per meal was around $8 a meal. So we have to fundraise or write grants or whatever we need to do to get to pay for that other part of the meal. And, we've gotten a 10% increase this next year. So I think it's like $4.30 something or something like that. But guess what? With the inflation, the cost of our meal, of producing the meal has gone up. We budgeted an extra 18% for food costs this year. And, putting out, a couple 100,000 meals, total we put out 245,000 home delivered meals. That's a lot of food. We buy a lot of food. So, that's I think it's, I don't know have the exact number, like a $80,000 or $100,000 difference. It's a lot of money. So
Yeah, certainly. And when you kind of lay the math out like that, it begs the question, is there, obviously you have the support of your volunteers and fundraisers, but is there a point where your organization has to make a hard choice, maybe create that wait list, or maybe kind of reconfigure operations? Is there a point where you think that this could break?
Well, there was a point actually in March of 2020. We were meeting in our conference room here with, our funder from Heritage, talking about how we're going to roll out and communicate. We've never had a wait list, and we were going to start a wait list at that time. And right when we were getting ready to send letters out, we may have already sent letters out, I'm not sure. But, everything, COVID happened, and, we weren't, there's no way you could have a wait list with that going on with the population we were serving. So, that got kicked down the road. But yes, at some point, that could happen. I feel good about the next year or two. We just got some ARPA funds to help with meals for our FY 23 and 24. So I feel pretty good about those 2 years. If we can, continuing on our fundraising path, will be okay. And, we get a lot of support. I'd be remiss if I didn't say, Lynn County, United Way, we have, as well as Heritage Agency on Aging, we have a lot of funders that help us with this, but it takes a village to feed an older adult. It's a lot of work, and it takes a lot of money. And we want to do more, not just more meals, help them in more ways.
Absolutely. It looks like maybe Jacqueline was able to join us by phone. So Jacqueline, if you can hear us, feel free to jump in at any point in this conversation. But I wanted to get back to you, Mike, about the point you raised about, ARPA funding. I've heard from area nonprofits, organizations who receive funding that while the added benefit was great, it is a short-term solution. So I'm curious just from your vantage point and the conversation you've had with other agencies who are working to kind of help this population. Is there a concern that maybe there could be other organizations like yourself considering wait lists or maybe not able to meet the need that exists?
I haven't talked to other nonprofit leaders directly about this subject, but I can tell you with me, and I'm sure it's the knowing other directors of nonprofits and how they think, yeah, it's a concern. Even, like for us, it's a Band-Aid, it's a welcome Band-Aid for a couple of years, but, we've really got to figure out a long-term solution to this. And, a big important part of this that people don't think about is the entire population growth, like from 2010 to 2030, I think we're going to grow like 30 million people in the United States. That the demographic that's going to grow is the over 60. The other demographics are not growing. The older population is growing, and these needs are only going to grow with it.
Absolutely. Jacqueline, I don't know if you can hear us. Oh, there you are.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
My phone is still showing that I'm muted. Thank you. Okay.
No, you're great.
Glitch. I have a Wi-Fi and it kind of went out. It wasn't charged. Oh, no. Sorry.
No, it's okay. I'm so glad you could jump back in and join us again. This has been kind of a wild ride of a panel, but it's been great. Well, maybe you could speak to this, Jacqueline, kind of to what Mike was speaking about. The organizations that you make client referrals to, are there concerns that at a certain point, the demand is just going to be too much for them to meet? Have you been hearing that at all? Is that a concern within your circle at all?
To the services that I've been referring my participants to, not necessarily, because the majority of them are government institutions, so they're prepared to step in where the need is, such as DHS, places like that. A few food pantries have indicated that they sometimes get a little low, but they stretch what they can. But for the most extent, because of the referrals I give my participants, they seem to be okay, not that much.
Sure, absolutely. Well, maybe that's like a good segue question then to solutions. What are for either panelist to kind of take this question, what do you think the solution is? Is this more government supports? Is there more funding for these agencies that kind of help fill this gap? What do you think would be a good next step as we kind of talk about inflation and rising social need?
Well, for our senior community, I'm speaking on behalf of myself as well, because I am a senior. I really would like to see more support. This is just me, because our population is really expanding right now. Quite a few of the baby boomers are, we're reaching that peak for the baby boomers and things like that, and the dollar is just not stretching. A lot of the seniors that I've come in contact with have not had the fortune to be able to save a really healthy nest egg. And the money that they have, they're mostly saving it for really dire emergencies. So it's very hopeful that the cost of living is going up for seniors coming up shortly, but I'm not even sure if that's going to be able to sustain them long term, especially with inflation rising as quickly as it has been rising.
Mike, do you have any thoughts to that?
Well, there is some increases in Older Americans Act funding, and I don't see how it can, government funding can keep up with the pace of, especially if the inflation increases like our food costs to put out meals. I don't have a good, solution, but again, it's going to take a village. It's, a combination of, getting shelf-stable food out to people and hot meals and, making sure that people get the benefits that they're eligible for. Something we didn't really touch on yet is, it's summertime, we don't think about it that much, but is, when it gets cold out, and fuel costs. And something like in the past, like LIHEAP, it's energy assistance for low-income folks. And we've sent out notices that this is available for our meal recipients, but this year we're going to take it a step further and make sure that we follow up and really encourage people to sign up for that. And it can be, if anybody who's called into any call center, to do anything, you could be reluctant. Oh, I don't want to, you're going to call and you press 2 and, whatever's going to happen. But HACAP, who oversees that locally, is really good now that the pandemic is over. I assume they'll do it again about going out in person and helping people fill out the application. So we want to make sure that that connection is made and that they can get that benefit, which is, it's up to $500, I believe, a household is the most you can get, and you have to be under 175% of the federal poverty level, and so that's most of the people that we serve. But something that hasn't been mentioned yet, and I'm just going to go ahead and jump in here and bring this up, is mental health with older adults. And we talked about the Medicaid and the Medicare. Well, the other thing that happens when you go to Medicare, like Medicaid, there's a lot of therapists, not all, but there are a number of therapists that will accept Medicaid as payment for mental health therapy. Medicare, it's very hard to find a therapist that accepts Medicare for therapy. And we've got, just through our Meals on Wheels program, we survey, and like right now, it's 83% of them feel less isolated, and that's just, due to Meals on Wheels. By having somebody stop by there for a few minutes, they feel less isolated. So you think about the mental health impacts, the isolation leads to depression and anxiety, and, it impacts us all. It impacts them. It's a ripple effect. When their mental health isn't good, they're depressed or anxious or whatever, it puts a bigger burden on our healthcare system. They're not as healthy, so it's a whole ripple. But it's an important thing that needs to be addressed. And again, I'm not sure exactly how to address that. I have some friends of mine that work in the field, and they run a fairly large mental health clinic, and they don't take Medicare. And why that is, I'm not sure. I know why they don't, because it's hard to get credentialed. You have to get credentialed to get insured, and they were actually told me they were turned down to be credentialed, and they're credentialed with everything else. So, I think this is something that can't be overlooked, is the mental health of our older adults, especially ones that are isolated and homebound.
Mike, I would like to jump on that bandwagon as well. You are 100% correct on that. I would even venture to say you're 150% correct, because in my program with a lot of seniors, during the pandemic, we had them stay at home, and we continued to pay them. Mm-hmm. But the toll it took on them and the career coaches as a whole was really hard, because they would call us and want to talk for hours, because they were isolated and they were restricted from going out. They didn't have their normal contact when they would go to their training sites and be around their peers or people that they've come to know. So it took a big toll on them. And as you said, if they were able to at least be able to talk with a therapist, even if it was online, then it would help them, it would help their spirits, and I think, like you said, it's a ripple effect. I really have to agree with you on that.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. No, I'm really glad both of you brought that point and spoke to that, because I certainly think that is a large part of this conversation. Not only do you help them cope with the economic challenges they're facing, but how to even help them recover in terms of not just their overall health, but their mental and emotional health. Have you guys seen any steps that, are good steps to help address this? You kind of, Mike, you spoke to just in increasing the number of therapists that could do this. What other steps would you like to see in terms of helping this population cope with this mental trauma that they've went through?
Boy, that's a tough one. When I first came into this role, we actually had a mental health department. We had 4 or 5 therapists that worked here, and I was toying with the idea of like in-home visits of therapists, and I had the guy who ran that department go out on a route and make some observations, and I think that would be great if we could get to a point. It's very expensive to do, but in-home therapy. And I know with technology maybe you can do it over Zoom or something like that, but it's not the same. And the people I know that are in the mental health profession will tell you that they think it's, for most people, not everybody, but most people, it's a better result if you're really doing that face-to-face work. And I think we really need to invest that in our older adults. And the folks that we serve that by definition are homebound, they're not the people, they're kind of a forgotten group. They're not the people that you see at the grocery store because, again, by definition, they're homebound, so they can't get out. And this year there was a law passed, the Iowa House and Senate, it was unanimously passed, that makes elder abuse its own crime for the first time in Iowa in 2022. It's great that got passed, but how was that not a crime on its own before then? It was probably a crime, like animal abuse was probably a separate crime, but elder abuse was not. So this is really like a separate, thing. And that's another thing that comes up, financial fraud and things like this. And there was a whole thing on NPR about financial fraud and how I'm getting older and my brain is changing. The brain changes and you can just become susceptible to this type of thing, whether it's online or phone calls or whatever. And we need to do something about that as well. So I'll let you jump in, Jacqueline. Sorry.
Yes, you are so correct about that. I mean, as a personal experience, my mother, she's in her 90s. She was called by someone saying that they were with the Publishers Clearinghouse and that she had won all this money, and all they needed from her was everything personal about her that you could ask for. And thank God she had the good sense to call her children and ask about it. She was all excited. I'm going to win this money. And I told them I'll call them back tomorrow with the information they want, Social Security number, bank account numbers, and all of this. We were so glad she called us. So called them back the next day with one of my sisters online. And they were still trying to convince my sister that this was a legitimate thing, that we're going to send this money to a bank account. And they gave the name of the bank, and my sister did a mute, and she called the bank, and naturally, there was no money deposited in my mother's name. But anyway, things like this are happening, and it is scandalous because they are actually getting vulnerable people. If my mother didn't have the good sense to call us, ask us what we thought, and to have someone with her when she called them back, she would have given all her information, and all of her life savings would have been gone. She would have been penniless. And I've heard on the news where this has actually happened. People have given information and they've been defrauded. There needs to be stricter laws, a way to catch these people without people having to go through this beforehand. After the fact, there are public announcements, but what about that person who has nothing anymore? So that's, sorry, I'm getting all passionate about this, but I think it's just horrible.
Yeah,
it's horrible.
I'm glad you spoke
get
to that.
lists. I don't know if they get lists with names or whatever. It needs to be a way that they can find a way to nip this in the bud, because if it's by people selling information, because a lot of companies will sell your information. So if it's something like that, there needs to be a law put in effect that companies cannot sell personal information. So I'm not sure to the solution, but it needs to be looked into.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry,
No.
I'll get off my soapbox right now. I'll get off my soapbox.
Oh, you're good. The other thing that occurs is after there's like one instance, even if there's cases where they realize they've been defrauded, but it's too embarrassing to say anything, and the fraud continues because they don't want, it's embarrassing to say that you got tricked. It's a terrible thing.
That is a terrible thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
please, Jacqueline.
It's important. It's important that we reach out to our community, and even if it's just a flyer every now and again, a gentle reminder: never give personal information to anyone that contacts you over the phone. Even government institutions will tell you they will not call you on the phone and ask you for your personal information. I know IRS will not do that, or will Social Security call you on the phone, period, and ever ask you for anything personal. You will be notified by mail, period. So it's important that, every now and again, there's a gentle reminder to let older Americans know that this is happening, and at all costs, protect your personal information, like your Social Security number, your bank accounts, things of that nature.
Absolutely. No, I'm really glad you guys raised that point. I think that was a great point to raise because, we've all received the scams, and we've also all heard the horror stories about, seniors being defrauded and losing their life savings. It's heartbreaking. So kind of just a quick pivot, just making a final call to our audience. If you have any questions for our panelists, please bring them forward now using the Q&A function in the chat here. And I guess while we kind of wait for those to populate, I'll ask panelists, any other final thoughts, other steps that you would like to see done to support seniors, both after the pandemic and in the midst of this current changing economic environment, anything else that you would like to see done as a next step?
I would like to strongly suggest that seniors contact their representatives, whether it's local, mayor or congressman, governor, whoever, to let them know that we still exist, okay? AARP does a great job of basically championing for seniors. So if you can support them by, getting a monthly subscription, do so, because they're a very strong advocate for seniors. So just keep that in mind. I mean, you can just call your senator, and I'm sure they have a line where you can just leave your concerns. And with anything, if you call enough, they will listen. And that's all I have to say. But be vocal.
I would second that, and I would also say, people that are local here, if you want to come down and volunteer to deliver meals or prepare meals, just go to horizonsfamily.org, and there's a volunteer button, and check it out and come help folks in the community out and get them fed.
Absolutely.
And the last thing I want to share, if you're 55 or better, look for a local Csep provider. It can greatly help you with, having a small income to help defray any, cost issues that you're having financially right now. So seek out your local Csep provider, national able preferably. But I think that's a great program. It affords seniors so much.
Absolutely. No, a good reminder for us to, remember where those resources are available for our community. So I'm not seeing any questions from the audience today, so I think we will leave it at that today. But thanks so much to our audience for taking the time to listen today. And thanks so much to both of our panelists today for sharing their insights and expertise. We appreciate you kind of dealing with technology challenges and still making it and still sharing your insights with us today.
Well, thank you for
Thanks
having me.
me. Yep.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. You have a great day. Bye-bye.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye, y'all.